Alright, I am back with another video, and today we've got a bit of a weird one. You see, a long time ago on this channel I was making modded builds, something that some people may expect from me, but they were builds that were only available to PC players, mods from the Baldur's Gate 3 Nexus or other kind of modding sites. And as such, it was kind of a weird experimental time of the channel where I was trying out new things amongst kind of keeping, like, you know, my similar videos kind of in rotation. It was a weird time. But anyways, during that time, this was prior to patch 7, so before mods officially came to the game, I made a build using two modded classes, one for Hexblade Warlock and the other for Bladesinger Wizard, which are now obviously in the game officially. Now, obviously, the classic combination of like two of the most powerful kind of Spellsword type subclasses in the game, that being Hexblade and Bladesinger, led to an interesting combination. People have done it in tabletop D&D before, hence the original video was based on a build video by Colby over at D&D Deep Dive, and basically, the whole premise of the video was to try and combine the two and see if I could come up with something interesting. And I did. The build was called the Curse-Weaver, and it was able to use the fact that Bladesinger got a extra attack that could use a cantrip in place of the second attack, with the ability to, you know, use our charisma for the attack and damage modifiers. It ended up being this really powerful charisma intelligence-based build that was honestly extremely fun to play, and was so strong that he was even able to take down solo combat encounters that were really not made to be taken on solo. But that was the thing. Because those that build was closer to the D&D tabletop version, it had a bit more power behind it, whereas the vanilla options, which is what we're going to be looking at today, kind of do and kind of don't. They're powerful, but in different ways. You see, the idea of this video was obviously it was highly requested to be remastered, let's just say, and I wanted to have a look and see how the new vanilla classes in that combination could compare to the original modded build. And like, as I said, it's strong in some ways, but also weaker in others. Specifically the lack of the cantrip extra attack that the modded Bladesinger had, because again, with the vanilla version, we didn't get that. We just got regular extra attack, which was honestly kind of disappointing. Because in my testing, while this build is extremely powerful, and I definitely did power build a little bit today, I kind of wanted to make this quite a strong build, so we're going to be diving back into some old habits in order to make this build work. But it was just like, there was a certain lack of flow to the combat of this one compared to the original. But then there's also new opportunities that came up that weren't present from the original, such as a Cursed Spectre being a surprisingly interesting thing to work with over the course of the build. So this is going to be a weird video. It's somewhat a remaster, somewhat a remake, because we're using this kind of almost the same leveling scheme, although I did drop the level of fighter from the original build for this one, because I'll be honest, we didn't really need it. And as such, I don't know, I was kind of interested to see how this worked out. Don't get me wrong, this build is strong. It can do pretty much everything the original build could do, but there was just a little bit of something missing, and I think that cantrip extra attack was kind of the root of it all. Which again, it's kind of a little bit disappointing that Bladesinger, like obviously we all wanted Bladesinger in the game, right? We all did. And I like the way it's implemented in Baldur's Gate 3, but it does feel like just a slightly lesser version of it compared to tabletop or even the modded versions, which is a little bit sad. Which is crazy because it's still like the most powerful subclass in the game, if not one of. So it's whatever. But anyways, let's get into the build. This is enough rambling. I hope you enjoy the video. So, first up, we have our first level, which is going to be in Warlock. Mainly because since Warlocks get their subclass at level 1, that being because we're still on the 2014 rules here, we get to just basically get a lot of the kit that we need right away. No faff, no messing about, which is amazing. So, for the race today, I went with Drow. No particular reason for it, I just kind of wanted to, and the original build was a Drow, so, you know, I just thought I'd go with that, but honestly, you can kind of use whatever. And I did go for Lovesworn Drow, because, I mean, this is definitely going to be a morally grey character at best, when you consider how this build is built, and the fact that its name is literally the Curse-Weaver. In fact, speaking on that, another kind of general theme for the build that I wanted to go for was leaning into the curse aspect. My spell choices in this build are actually focused around cursing and debilitating enemies, so that our melee attacks and our team's kind of abilities can be more likely to succeed. You'll see what I mean. Basically, we are actually playing into the angle of we are cursing everybody with as many curses as we can. Sometimes those curses are in quotations, but you'll get the point. So, obviously we're starting off as a Warlock. This is going to give us access to light armor and simple weapons. We don't really need that since Bladesinger will give us that anyway a bit later, but it's nice to be able to start off and get into some light armor right away. For our cantrips, again, I wanted to kind of play into the curse aspect, and since we are going to be able to get a ton of cantrips when we multiclass into wizard, and we're actually going to be ending this build with the same amount of charisma and intelligence, pretty much. We don't really need to worry about what cantrips we take at the moment. Now, obviously, Eldritch Blast is a thing. If you're fully power building, absolutely grab Eldritch Blast. No reason not to. But again, I like to try and shake things up where I can and keep an interesting theme. So when I think of, like, cursing and hexes, I also think of, like, you know, necromancers and such like that, especially with our Cursed Spectre. So I'm leaning a little bit into the necrotic damage today, going for Bone Chill for a attack roll-based necrotic damage cantrip, and Toll the Dead for a saving throw based one, which can do a little bit more damage, but is obviously less likely to go off because wisdom saves, yada yada yada. So you got a couple of options there for you. Now, obviously, biggest thing here is our Hexblade subclass. Now, again, for the most part, this is pretty much the same as the original modded build. Honestly, Hexblade didn't really have too many changes. However, I do think that the original modded version allowed you to have your hexed weapon and your bound pact weapon from Pact of the Blade be two different weapons, so that allowed for dual wield shenanigans, whereas this one does not. We're still going to dual wield in this build, we're just not really going to be using our offhand attack so much. So, you gain access to 2 spells automatically added as extra to your spell list. You're going to get, well, hang on a minute. Yeah, you get Raffle Smite and what was the other one again? Shield. That's it. I don't know why it showed Hex there in the subclass screen. That's a bit weird. Probably because I already have them selected. But regardless, so you're going to get Raffle Smite and Shield added to your spell list. Although we're going to take Shield from Wizards, so don't worry about that too much here. But for now, the 2 spells I have chosen are going to be Hex for that extra necrotic damage, and of course it's our first curse, makes sense, as well as the Raffle Smite to get a bit of extra psychic damage on an attack. So this build is kind of based around doing necrotic and psychic damage, which is a fun combination. We're going to get our bind hexed weapon, allowing us to make it so that we can choose any weapon that we have in our hand, become proficient with it, and it will use our charisma modifier for the attack and damage rolls. Also, and this is somewhat different to the original modded build, I believe, is that when we hit a target with this weapon, we have a chance to inflict our Hexblade's curse, which means we'll add our proficiency bonus to damage rolls against the target who is cursed, and we roll a critical hit on a 19 or higher, which obviously is an amazing buff. We also have the ability to inflict this manually as a bonus action, if we so desire. And if the target dies while they're cursed, we regain a bit of HP, which is nice. And obviously, we gain access to our medium armor, shields, and martial weapons here as well. Of course, we can't use medium armor or shields if we're going with Bladesinger, so that's not really relevant, but having access to all martial weapons is nice. Although, again, that is somewhat limited by Bladesinger. Honestly, the weapon proficiencies don't matter too much. We're mainly just here so we can go attacking with charisma right off the bat, and get 2 curses as well, because that's obviously what we want. Already gone over the spell choice, and for the background, I went with Sage. I mean, again, we are part wizard, while also being part warlock. We're a knowledge seeker, we're studying curses, and we're applying them in a deadly way. So I feel like Sage felt alright, giving us arcana and history, despite the fact that we're starting as a warlock. For our ability score to kind of start, as you can see, this is a very weird stat spread, and yes, we are, like I said, we're going back to some old channel habits here, where I relied a little bit more on stat boosting items. So, strength is at 8 because we don't need it. Dexterity is at 8 because, yes, we are using the gloves of dexterity. Now, a lot of people take umbrage with this because obviously there are a lot more interesting kind of glove options that could work with this build. For example, the Battle Mage's gloves, etc. So really, the goal of this build was kind of to try and make the stats work out as best as I could, and unfortunately the gloves of dex were kind of needed for that. However, in the late game, you can actually swap the gloves of dex for the Amulet of Greater Health once you reach Act 3, and then you can kind of swap the dexterity and constitution stats around, because obviously you'll then have a 23 in constitution, making you absolutely busted. But I feel like other builds might want the Amulet of Greater Health a bit more, so you might just want to stick with the Gloves of Dex. I don't know, it's up to you. You're going to want at least one stat boosting item here though, for either dexterity or constitution. The original build that this is a remaster of also did use the Amulet of Greater Health in the late game, so really, it's up to you to kind of decide how you want to pilot the stat increases here, but really this is going to be a solid thing to start from in the early game. I would probably recommend that you actually maybe dump some points of intelligence here and put those into dexterity instead, since we're mainly going to be using our charisma in the early game for our cantrip and weapon damage. And basically, until you kind of get your hands on the Gloves of Dex in sort of later Act 1, you might want to basically have your Intelligence and Dexterity swapped, or maybe not. You might just be happy to kind of cruise it with a lower Dexterity, maybe swapping the Wisdom and Dex, and just kind of hoping for the best, because Bladesong is actually going to carry you kind of far in terms of your defensive capabilities. So play around with the stats a little bit, but definitely in the early game, grab the Gloves of Dex so that everything feels a bit more comfortable. Now, the skill proficiencies, obviously we have Arcana and History, both quite high because of our high intelligence. We also have Investigation for +5 there. Perception is at 0, but it's whatever, we just get that for being a drow. And Intimidation as well, because I wanted at least one Charisma skill, and I felt like Intimidation worked. However, I just realised I forgot to go over the rest of the stats. Whoops. Sorry, it's been a while since I've recorded the video. So, Intelligence is at 16, obviously this is going to be our main spellcasting stat for our wizard spells, of which we're going to have quite a lot. Wisdom is at 10, we don't really need it any higher than that, although those wisdom saving throws can be a bit nasty. And charisma is at 17, because for the first time in a long time, we're using Auntie Ethel's boon. Now, I know this was kind of a controversial thing that I did a lot back in the early days, where I just basically took Auntie Ethel's boon on everything, but really, since when the channel started shifting to a more lore-focused kind of build philosophy, I guess, we kind of stopped using it because I wanted to let that be a player choice for if people wanted to further optimize the builds I was already making. But I feel like for this build, we're a Curse-Weaver, we're learning about hexes. I feel like if this character, especially being a morally grey one, they would definitely take Auntie Ethel's boon, I think, if placed into that situation. 100%. And using it to buff up our charisma to 18 means that we can use equipment to get it up to 20, and then focus our feats into intelligence to have both at 20, or spread it out across a few different stats, up to you. But really, just getting this to an 18 without needing to use a feat or an ability score improvement just feels so good. So honestly, I highly recommend it. So yeah. And finally, Constitution is at 14. That may seem a little bit low, but we actually don't need it any higher than that. Bladesong will make our concentration saves basically impossible to fail, especially since we're going to have advantage on those saves as well. Even without Constitution saving throw proficiency, we have a base +7 to those saving throws by the time this build is done, as well as having advantage on all of those saves. So it's going to go pretty damn well for us. But yeah, that is the stats, that is the skill proficiencies. I'm sorry I'm a bit all over the place today, but, you know, like I said, it's been a while. Right, so at level 2, we're going to want to start getting over to Wizard straight away, because I want that Bladesong. So let's do that now. As a wizard, we're going to gain access to a few things, namely our starting cantrips. And yes, of course, we are going to grab Booming Blade here because there's really no reason not to. As I said, the original build had the ebb and flow of having the cantrip extra attack, and getting Booming Blade, basically the closest thing we're going to get to that. Despite the fact that it is a cantrip, it does count as a weapon attack, meaning that it can be used as part of an extra attack. So really, if you want to keep that kind of tabletop Bladesinger vibe, we kind of have to pick this up. If we're doing a melee attacking round, then there's no reason not to take this for the extra damage it provides. I know, I use it on all of my builds at the moment, but it's so hard to not to take when it just works for so many of them. So, you know, you just gotta do it sometimes. As for the rest of the build, though, as for the rest of the cantrips, really, it's entirely up to you what you want to take. I do like picking up friends, because we are a charisma-based character, you never know when it could help, as well as just kind of another maybe utility or damage cantrip. I always like to take Mage Hand, because it can be surprisingly useful, so really just get a couple of utility cantrips and Booming Blade here to start. Moving on to our spell choices for level 1. Obviously, gonna take Shield for the defensive action. I think by the time this build is done, if we have shield up, I think we're looking at about 27, 28 AC, which is obviously quite good. Again, a little bit power buildy, but still quite good. But yeah, we have access to a few other things. Basically, you can kind of just pick up whatever. I like Ray of Sickness because it kind of fits the curse, maybe like Alchemical Brew vibe, potentially poisoning a target and dealing poison damage. You can grab things like False Life, a bit of a necromancy spell here to give yourself some bit of tankiness. I quite like that personally as well. Tasha's Hideous Laughter and Sleep are both curses. You can cause someone to go absolutely mad, falling down, laughing, and being prone. And then Sleep, obviously the classic curse of putting someone into a slumber. Always a thing. Really, and then the rest is kind of up to you. I would say Charm Person here is in fact another curse, so even though it's probably less useful, especially since we have friends, you might as well pick it up. And I would say for our early game spells, I like the look of this for now. At Wizard level 2, you're going to be able to grab your subclass, and obviously we're going to go with Bladesinging here. This is going to give us access to Bladesong. Now again, this is where the subclass immediately starts to differ as well. We have from the original modded version, because now we have Bladesong Power, which is a separate unit of charging that is based on how many levels we have in Bladesong, whereas before it was equal to like your Wizard level plus your intelligence modifier, basically like for tabletop. So unfortunately we do have less overall uses of Bladesong in this build compared to the original, but still more than enough to get the job done. You get training in War and Song, which is just giving us proficiency in light armor, and in the performance skill, which is nice, another charisma-based skill for us, as well as gaining proficiency with daggers, sickles, short swords, rapiers, scimitars, and longswords. Those are the weapons that you're allowed to use with Bladesinging. You can't use anything else. A bit of a shame, but it's still a very diverse kind of selection here. But the main ticket here, obviously, is Bladesong, giving us a +2 bonus to our armor class and increases our movement speed by 3 meters. We also gain advantage in acrobatics and a +2 bonus to constitution saving throws. This will increase the more we level up in Bladesinger. By the time we're done with leveling Bladesinger, this should all be +3, so you get a +3 to your armor class and a +3 to your con saves. But then, again, even though we lost the cantrip extra attack, this is where Bladesinger is strong in a new way, with the Bladesong Climax and Bladesong charges. Basically, for casting non-weapon attack spells, or for attacking with your weapon, you accumulate 2 different charges based on the one that you used. Basically, attacking with a weapon will grant you a healing charge, and using a level 1 or above spell that is not a weapon attack will give you a damage charge. The healing charge will heal you for 1d6 hit points whenever you use Bladesong Climax, and the damage charge will deal 1d6 force damage per charge when you hit the Bladesong Climax. So basically the idea is that you cast spells and use weapon attacks to build up the 2 charges, then you hit the Bladesong Climax, unleashing all of your charges, dealing a massive amount of healing and damage. This does end the Bladesong, but you can just trigger it right again on your next turn. This is insane. This is nothing like what tabletop does at all. Not even the new 2024 version that just came out does anything like this. This is definitely way more video gamey, because keeping track of all your charges in tabletop would be probably a nightmare. So the fact that they kind of use the fact that this is a video game that can automatically calculate these things for you to your advantage, it feels nice, and it honestly does give the build a bit of a different vibe that it didn't have before. So you know what? Maybe we can live without the Bladesinger cantrip extra attack, but I still miss it. So, next up, we get to choose a couple more spells. Really, it's entirely up to you what you want to grab here. Anything kind of works. We picked up most of the stuff that I would like, although I did try out Witch Bolt in my testing, and I actually did quite like it. I felt like the fact that it's Witch Bolt, you're kind of like, you know, attaching yourself to someone else with lightning. It's like a different type of curse. I kind of like it. I like it for this build, so I'm going to pick it up here. And of course, what kind of hexer would we be if we didn't have a little black cat familiar or something? Moving on to our Bladesinger weapon. We are actually going to be using a scimitar today. That's what I kind of just decided to go with. The original build also used the scimitar, so I wanted to use it here as well. And finally, you can mess about with your spell choice if you want. I think I'm going to slap the Witch Bolt here. Right, now, you could continue with Wizard if you want to, but I feel like we're going to get more out of Warlock in the early levels. We basically kind of just wanted Bladesong for the moment, plus some of the utility spells that can come with taking Wizard, so we're going to be doing that now. Well, we've done that, I should say, so now we're going to be going back to Warlock to get kind of the big base for our kit before returning to Wizard for more Bladesong stuff later. So, we get to choose another spell here. Really, it's entirely up to you what you want to grab. I quite liked using Armour of Agathis here. We did take, False Life as a wizard, but with Armour of Agathis, we can do the same sort of thing, giving ourselves a bit of temporary hit points, making us a bit more tanky, and then retaliating with cold damage if we're struck. It just kind of synergizes with the build nicely, giving you a bit of extra tankiness and a bit of extra damage. Now, for your abilities here, for your Eldritch Invocations, you've got a few options. First up, we're going to be grabbing Beguiling Influence to give us the other 2 charisma skills that we don't have, meaning that we now have proficiency in Deception, Persuasion, Intimidation, and Performance, meaning that we're just going to be perfect as the face of the party. As for your other kind of one here, you gotta go with FIFA 5 Fates, giving you access to Invocation Bane, allowing you to cast Bane on all of your enemies, which is, again, another curse, making it so that up to 3 creatures will receive a 1d4 penalty to their attack rolls and saving throws. You can only do this once for long rest this way, unfortunately, but I still think it works out really, really well. I quite like the idea of having like a kind of ranged curse that kind of can affect multiple people, so I think these two fit the build quite nicely. At Warlock level 3, we get to choose our Pact Boon as well as our first level 2 spell. And of course we have to go with Crown of Madness. It's literally a Curse of Madness. We have to go for it. Instill madness in a humanoid enemy, making them attack the closest creature to them other than yourself, even if it is allied. So basically you can just turn someone on their allies, which is always fun. However, we have some other options that I'll be going through a little bit. Now, of course, for our Pact Boon, I know I choose the same one every time, but really, there's no reason to take the other two on this build. We do want Pact of the Blade, because we are going to need extra attack from Warlock this time, because we're not going to be getting Bladesinger's extra attack. Now, the way I wanted to do the leveling in this build, as you'll see, makes it so that we only go to level 5 in Wizard, where you need to be level 6 for the extra attack. But I decided to take Honor Mode into account with this build and the fact that you can't normally stack the extra attacks if you're playing at the highest difficulty. If you're in Tactician, though, you could do a 6-6 split and get the extra attacks there, but regardless of that, you will still have a way to attack with 3 attacks in a turn if you want to, by the time this build is done. I'll show you what I mean when we get to the end. So really, not the end of the world here, but Pact of the Blade is going to give us the extra attack that we need for this build, so we do have to take it here. If you pick to Drow, you do get Darkness as well, so you might want to pick up Devil's Sight in this build, up to you. At Warlock level 4, we're going to gain access to another cantrip, and, I mean, we can grab Poison Spray here, but I know, obviously, Eldritch Blast is sitting right there, but I kind of like the idea, again, being a kind of Hexer, Curse-Weaver type character. Poison Spray just feels right up our alley. We also do get to choose another level 2 spell, and we have a bunch of options. Old Person is a really good option, Misty Step is a really good option, but Ray of Enfeeblement feels very much like a curse. You weaken a foe, meaning that they'll deal half damage with weapon attacks using strength. If you know you're going up against a strength-based opponent, this is devastating and can make both yourself and whoever is your frontliner extremely tanky. So I really like having this one for the flavor, but also for the utility it can provide. We also gain access to our first feat of the build, and I definitely want to bump up our intelligence at this point so that we have an 18 in charisma and an 18 in intelligence by this point in the game. At Warlock level 5, we're going to gain access to that extra attack that we want so much. It's a couple of levels later than we would have been if we were going either pure Warlock or pure Wizard, but I think the fact that we had Bladesong up until now absolutely made up for it. We're probably doing a mix of spellcasting and swordplay kind of at this point, and maybe we're not doing as much either or as effectively yet, but now that we have extra attack, we can really start to take off. Moving on, we also now gain access to level 3 spells, and really we are starting to kind of be overwhelmed by choice here. There's so many things we could use. Vampiric Touch, a curse that lets you drain, vitality from your enemies. A Curse of Fear, which is probably what I'll take for now. Hypnotic Pattern, Hold Person, Darkness. There's so many good things here that all fit the build, so honestly, pick your favourite. But we also do gain access to Eldritch Invocations, which at this point you can choose the Sign of Ill Omen, allowing you to grab Bestow Curse, which obviously would be the right choice here. So, you can curse a creature with your touch. The curse either bestows disadvantage on checks and saving throws or attacks. It lets you do additional damage to the target, or you can rob a target of its actions. There's basically, you click the spell, a whole bunch of different curse options come up, and you pick one and you apply it to the enemy. This is an amazingly fun spell that I really don't use enough in my builds. However, I will point out a slight caveat. The reason I'm taking this here now with an invocation is because while we could get it from Wizard later, with this leveling scheme, we wouldn't be able to get it for a while. I would probably, once you're able to get this spell from Wizard, I would probably respec and choose a different invocation, because the problem is this version of Bestow Curse can only be cast with Warlock spell slots, meaning you can only use it twice by the time this build is done. But if you take it from Wizard, you'll be able to use it much more than that, because you can use both spell slots from Wizard and Warlock. So, while I'm taking this now so that you get it as early as possible in the level progression, you might want to train it out a bit later. At Warlock level 6, we're going to gain access to Accursed Spectre. When you or an ally within 18 meters slay a creature that is afflicted with the Hexblade's curse, you can raise an Accursed Spectre that will fight alongside you for a short period of time. This is something that is obviously new to this version of Hexblade. We didn't really get this from the modded version, I don't believe. If I'm remembering that incorrectly, you have to forgive me. But this works really, really well for our build. Basically, you get this kind of NPC that you don't get to directly control, but you can influence its actions. It cannot move, but it can do a ranged necrotic damage attack. And if you hit the target with your Hexblade weapon, you can... the creature will automatically teleport to it and do a melee attack. So you basically kind of just get this, like, stand, I guess, that kind of fights alongside you independently of yourself, which I think is pretty damn cool. So I feel like it makes sense for this build to have, literally being able to kind of raise these undead monstrosities. Originally, I wanted to go down the necromancer route for this build and kind of have it do a bunch of raising here and there, but unfortunately it was kind of hard to get access to a decent ways to use necromancy, so I leaned more into the curse aspect. But you could pick up things like Animate Dead if you want to, because we do gain access to it eventually, but otherwise, don't worry about it too much. Now, as for your next spell, really up to you what you want to take here. We do have a ton of options available to us, so really, again, it's a pick your poison situation. You can kind of choose whatever you like here. I would say, Hypnotic Pattern or Vampiric Touch. I think I'm going to go with Hypnotic Pattern. I kind of like the spell. Some people say it's trash, but it's my treasure. And I think that's what's most important here. And finally, at Warlock level 7, this is going to be our last level in Warlock, we gain access to something that is unique to Warlock. That being Staggering Smite. Normally, you would be able to get this on Paladin, but we don't actually reach a high enough level of Paladin in this game to be able to achieve it. However, this is awesome. This allows you to hit with a big weapon attack that deals extra psychic damage, which again, is basically an upgraded version of our Raffle Smite from earlier. But rather than the Raffle Smite, which does frightening, this staggers the target, which makes them completely unable to do most things. They'll have disadvantage on attack rolls and ability checks and cannot take reactions. This can actually help you disengage if you want to hit for big damage and then move out of the way, because obviously they won't be able to use a reaction to get an opportunity attack against you, and it just feels like a kind of a nice capstone for our Warlock levels here. But obviously there's things that are like Phantasmal Killer, which can definitely feel like a curse of some kind, Banishment, Blight, greater invisibility. Really, you can kind of pick whatever you like here, but I really do like grabbing Staggering Smite. We also do gain another Eldritch Invocation as well, which could let us grab Confusion, or what might be a classic version of a curse, Sculpture of Flesh for Polymorph. This will allow you to transform a creature into a harmless sheep. Again, cursing someone to become the form of an animal that they weren't otherwise already. That's a classic curse, you know, the Frog Prince, Emperor's New Groove. Total classic. You get the point, right? So I feel like I had to pick up Polymorph in this build, and this feels like a fun way to do it. You won't be using it all the time, but you know, come on, it's Polymorph. You get to turn a creature into a sheep. I mean, they're so fluffy. What else can I say? That is going to be our final Warlock level for the build, though. Let's jump back over to Wizard and start picking up some stuff there. Namely, some level 2 spells. Again, though, we can kind of pick up whatever we like here. I like grabbing Blindness. This feels like an interesting curse-type spell as well, and it's a unique one because it doesn't use our concentration, so we can place this on another one and then concentrate on a big spell on kind of like the main target. You can blind a creature, meaning that attack rolls against it have advantage, and the foe attacks with disadvantage. And also, they obviously can't use their range attacks nearly as well. I would say in a similar vein, we can also grab Darkness as well, just to kind of play into that archetype. If you grab Double Sight, this is going to be amazing for you, but you can also drop it down on a bunch of ranged people, and they have to spend their turn to move, yada yada yada. Or you could go with something like Hold Person, which I'm actually thinking might be better now that I've said that. If you grab the Double Sight, though, maybe you retrained out the Bestow Curse, giving Invocation, you know, the one, the Sign of Ill Omen, then pick up Double Sight and grab Darkness here as well. Again, you're going to be respecking a couple of times on this build, I find. Really, you got to kind of, like, plan out your route of the build carefully, I would say. But yeah, this is kind of the spell selection I would go with. At Wizard level 4, we're going to gain access to another cantrip, and I might pick up Acid Slash here, just because I feel like it fits the vibe. We're also going to be grabbing another couple of level 2 spells here, really up to you what you want to take. This would probably be where I would take Darkness, and then, Melf's Acid Arrow could be fun. You've got Blur, Cloud of Daggers. I mean, there's a ton of stuff you could really go for here. I kind of like Misty Step for the utility, just being able to have a guaranteed way of getting in and out, so that's probably what I'll go with here. But really, it's entirely up to you. Also, you get to choose another feat for this build, and again, at this point in the build, you will actually have a 20 in Charisma, so you can either choose to max out your Intelligence, which is what I would personally do to give our Wizard spells the most oomph that they can get, but there's also the ability to bump up your Constitution if you're not swapping the equipment around, or even your Dexterity if you have, entirely up to you. And then finally, at Wizard level 5, we get an extra Bladesong charge, so now we can use this a bit more often, as well as access to level 3 spells. Again, you can pick up things like Animate Dead and Bestow Curse at this point. Again, I would pick up Bestow Curse here, and then retrain out the invocation that we took. And then, really, it's kind of up to you, whatever you want to take for the rest of them. There aren't really too many, like, curses, I would say here, although slow would be an amazing way to kind of keep the enemy locked down. Again, it's one of my favorite spells in the game. But also you could take remove curse, because I mean, if you know how to inflict curses, you might want to know how to get rid of them, you know, just in case. So really, it's entirely up to you. Pick your favorite here. And yeah, prepare your spells as you like. And that is the build. Overall, what you're going to be getting out of this is a pretty debilitating character. You've got so many different ways of inflicting debuffs on your opponents, including up to multiple ones at a time, but you're just going to make life extremely easy for your party. As well as the fact that you are pretty self-sufficient. The fact that your Bladesong is going to give you such a massive amount of AC and Constitution saving throw proficiency, you're really not ever going to have to worry about this character too much. It's kind of a drop them on the battlefield, let them do their thing, and not really think too hard. You're just going to be really, really good. Throw down a powerful concentration spell to muddle up the enemy, hit them for big damage, curse, throw your Hexblade's curse around, summon in the Cursed Spectre, which all kind of just happens automatically, and just go to town. Let your party members go crazy with the curses that you inflict, and just sit back and watch the chaos yourself while you're smacking people with swords and using your cantrips. Like, it's a fun time. So really, yeah, I mean, this build is kind of the epitome, I think, of what people would want a Bladesinger Warlock to be. You get all the power of Hexblade, being able to, you know, use that kind of hexing power and being a powerful spell sword, while also being able to use Bladesong to really give yourself an edge in physical combat, and also having access to a wide variety of spells. It's just a lot of fun. Now, overall, do I think this level combination in vanilla is better than the original modded one? In some ways, yes, Bladesong Climax is a massive boon, but obviously, flavor-wise, I just really want that cantrip extra attack back. Who knows, maybe modders will bring it back. Perhaps they already have, and I didn't even notice. But again, I'm trying to keep this build as vanilla as possible, so, you know, this is what we're working with. And like I say, it does work pretty damn well. We've got a Bind Hex weapon here, and a Bladesong, so I can quickly show you the stats. Let's enter turn-based mode. Fix the camera. Ooh, very nice stance there. Might use that for the thumbnail. But yeah, anyways. Here is what our character is going to be looking like when all is said and done. First up, for our weapon, I just realized it unequipped my weapon before I used Bind Hex weapon. Whoops. Let's exit turn-based mode for a second and reapply that. There you go, enter turn-based mode. Oh, please work. Thank you very much. And yeah, there we go. You can kind of see everything as it's meant to be now. So, for our weapon of choice, we are using the Belm in the late game. The Belm is basically here to give us a little bit of the flavor that the original build had, with having the ability to kind of stack extra attacks a bit better. Because with this, we gain access to all of our usual weapon attacks, but we can also use Perfectly Balanced Strike, allowing us to attack as a bonus action, and not being affected by dual wielding like you would be if you used the legendary rapier that I'm forgetting the name of, the Duelist Prerogative. That's it. So basically this just gives us access to a bunch of attacks if we're not using our bonus action for anything else. Even if we cast a spell with our action, we can still attack with a bonus action without having to use our offhand weapon, which is really, really nice. Speaking of our offhand weapon though, we are going to just throw the Cold Snap in the offhand here, giving us the ability to gain a +1 bonus to our AC just for having it there, but also when a creature misses us with an attack, which is going to happen a lot, they must succeed a Constitution saving throw or be chilled for 2 turns. Except I found out recently that this weapon is bugged. The Constitution saving throw always fails, meaning that if somebody attacks you and misses you, they are guaranteed to become chilled, which means they will be vulnerable to cold damage, which is kind of useful, actually. If you throw a cold damage cantrip onto this, which I forgot to do for some reason, you will actually be able to do a pretty significant amount of damage. Not to mention, if you build up chilled enough and even somehow manage to make your opponent wet, maybe you have a cleric that has Create or Destroy Water, they will become frozen, which can lead to some very interesting shenanigans. But this is mainly just here for the +1 to our armor class, but actually, this can be pretty significant in battle. Now, for your earlier game options, my favourite weapon for this build would be the Baneful. This allows you to gain extra kind of abilities if it is your Warlock Pact weapon, which obviously works for us. If you have it this way, you'll be able to gain a +1 bonus to damage and attack rolls, turning this into a +1 weapon overall, and on a hit, you can possibly bane the target, so you can literally inflict curses with your melee weapon attacks. To be perfectly honest, I would probably, flavor-wise, actually use this over the Belm if it wasn't for the mechanical benefits that Belm kind of gets us, but obviously this fits the build more flavor-wise, so feel free to go with this if you so desire. There's also the Justicious Scimitar. If you attack with advantage, you have a chance of blinding the target, which isn't really huge for us, but it does come with a psychic damage, kind of shadowy blow attack, that adds a bit of extra damage as well. But really, this is just if you want a decent +2 option in the kind of mid-game, rather than using the Baneful. So yeah, there you go. So, but I would probably use the Baneful if I wasn't thinking entirely about power building here. Anyways, moving on to the equipment. In the late game, you're going to want to pick up the Birthright. This is going to give you a +2 to your Charisma, allowing us to have a final stat block of 18 Dex, 14 Con, 20 Intelligence, 10 Wisdom, and 20 Charisma, which is pretty damn good. Having both of our main spellcasting stats maxed out on a build for the first time in a long time is kinda nice. We've also got the Cloak of Protection here, giving us another buff to our armor class and saving throws. This just feels nice to use. We have the Armour of Landfall, giving us a +1 bonus to our spell save DC. That works for both our Warlock and our Wizard spells. Whenever we start our turn on a Plant Growth surface or Vine service, we regain a little bit of hit points. We can also cast Plant Growth out of this, but we're not really focused on that. What we're really here for is the advantage on Constitution saving throws. Basically, this gives us a little bit of a buff to our spell save DC, as well as making our concentration checks basically impossible to fail. We obviously have the Gloves of Dexterity here to increase our Dexterity score to 18. Obviously, we need this for stat reasons, unless you want to swap it out for the Amulet of Greater Health in the late game, in which case you can swap your Constitution and Dexterity stats around. You would have a little bit less AC, but honestly, not really a huge deal. Speaking of AC, we also have the Evasive Shoes here, giving us a +1 Acrobatics and a +1 Armor class, both of which kind of fit the vibe of a Bladesinger. Now, obviously, I've done a lot of stat stacking here. We've got basically all stat boosting items in some way or another, or armor class boosting items. This is intentional. I wanted this build to, again, just be kind of a plop them on the battlefield, watch them cause chaos, and forget you even have to play the game. This is kind of a power buildy build, because that's what the Hexblade Bladesinger is. It's a power building fantasy, and I wanted to lean into that. So coming out of this with a 24 AC, using Bladesong, 28, 27, can't math. Big number if you have shield. Oh, my brain is all over the place today, I apologize. You're gonna have... Basically, you're never really going to drop concentration. You're almost never going to get hit unless it's an AoE attack, in which case your high dexterity is probably going to save you from something like a fireball with the saving throw. Like, you're going to do pretty damn well. The only thing you got to watch out for is wisdom saving throws effectively, which is not exactly a big deal for us, I don't think, at this point. For your accessories, however, you're going to have the Amulet of Misty Step. If you're not really going to use the Amulet of Greater Help, the Amulet of Misty Step is just a nice thing to give you Misty Step every short rest, but really anything can go in this slot, maybe the Reverberating Necklace or something like that. Honestly, pick your poison. I also like grabbing the Ring of Protection in this playthrough. I like the idea of this character stealing the Idol of Sylvanas, even though they may be saved for Grove. I feel like just doing that and being able to give this to Mole just feels like kind of a fun thing. I don't know why. Maybe it's like the whole thing of like, you know, the witch in the woods, not really preying on children in this case, but maybe having like a, you know, like a kind of like that. I don't know how to explain it. It's not, I don't know how to explain it without sounding weird. Basically, just steal a magical artifact in order to make yourself more powerful. That's what a morally grey hexer does. But you can swap this out for whatever. You're still going to have a really high AC no matter what. Anyways, and finally, the Ring of Arcane Synergy. If you deal damage with a cantrip, you gain Arcane Synergy, which allows you to deal damage equal to the affected entity's spellcasting ability modifier. Basically, you add your spellcasting ability modifier to your attacks with weapons. But basically, I know there's like multiclassing shenanigans. Technically, it's going to use our intelligence, but because they're both the same, our intelligence and charisma doesn't really matter. For early game equipment though, most of this is obtained in like the early to mid game. It's not actually too bad. The hat and the armor being the only things that are strictly Act 3, in which case you can use the Fistbreaker Helm. That's meant to be the Fistbreaker Helm. I don't know why that's the elegant like garb. That might be a mod doing that. But anyways, the Fistbreaker Helm gives you a +1 bonus to your initiative rolls and a bonus to your spell save DC, I believe. But otherwise, the link will be in the description for the wiki. And also in the early game, we're at Drow, might as well grab the Spider Silk Armor to still give us that advantage on Constitution saving throw checks. As for the fashion for today, We have the padded armor version 1 and the Jaheira boots from the Fear Tailor's Camp Clothing mod, as always, available on all consoles, coloured in the vanilla black and furnace red dye to kind of give us this like dark Warlock type look, which I absolutely love, because obviously this is the Warlock's default armor, just coloured in a slightly different way. But yes, that is the build, and overall, I mean, I'm happy with it. It's a powerful character. I think it fulfills the fantasy that going for a Bladesinger Hexblade kind of mix would fulfill, but I don't know, does it have as much of a kind of, like, vibe as the original? I don't know. I'll let you guys be the judge of that. Feel free to watch both videos and let me know what you think. If you want to go into the modded subclasses, feel free to go check that old video out, but obviously I think most people will want to go the vanilla route nowadays. But yeah, I would say this build is pretty damn good. I quite like it. I think it uses both subclasses quite well. I mean, obviously, if you're playing on something lower than honor mode and you don't really care about maybe staggering smite, you could obviously drop a level there and throw that into Bladesinger to get a bunch of attacks and just be an absolute monster. I would say this build's biggest disadvantage is it does kind of rely on a lot of stat boosting gear, obviously the gloves of dexterity or the amulet of greater health being the biggest thing, Ethel's boon, but with all that said and done, it's still good. I think this build really can shine, and if you're going to be power building with this sort of thing, you're going to be wanting to take every advantage you can get. So really, is it that big of a deal? I personally don't think so. I mean, hell, you're still going to have a decent AC if you want to swap out some of the AC boosting equipment for other stuff, but really there was nothing else that I felt like fit the build, so I just slapped the AC boosting equipment on there. But really, you can kind of just do whatever you want for this build. So yeah, that is it. That is the second video of the 2 that were voted for. So as of now, I'm free to go back to other videos. I've got some ideas. I've got an idea for an origin build. It's been a while since I've done one of those, and I think you guys will actually quite like, so stay tuned for that. And then past that, I'm not really sure. I've got some ideas knocking around in my head that I want to try. There was a build that we were discussing on the Discord the other day that I actually kind of want to turn into a video revolving around potions, which I think could be quite fun. And I actually do want to get into making another big long-form video again. I have this video project I've got in my back pocket that's a little bit similar to my Dragon's Dogma video, but done in a different game. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, that is going to do it for me. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you all next time. Goodbye.